the World Bank, and the OECD. These are brand new documents. The public has had no notice of them. They're internal documents. They're not classified. They're just, you'll never read them. But the gist of it, when I read them, I couldn't believe what I was reading, that they're prepared to go to this extent and keep it from the American people. But our government is turning to the IMF and the World Bank to address our debt problem. The United States government's debt
Our
problem.
trillions of dollars of debt.
Trillions of dollars, to the point where any decent economist or accountant will tell you there's no such thing as $20 trillion. It doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
Okay, a computer says it's there as a blip in the screen, but it doesn't exist, not even in paper currency. It's just an electronic dashboard that's blinking in your face saying $20 trillion. But the only reason you and I are even functioning is because, and please beg my difference, I'm getting old, beg my difference. I don't mean to insult the country, but my countrymen, my brothers and sisters, sure as dumb as a box of rocks.
Stay with us on that thought.
To be swallowed by people is as if you just happen to insult them first, because then they'll get angry enough to listen.
Well, they listen to you, believe me.
But here's just a brief quote from these papers, just one paragraph. Even after one of the most severe multi-year crises on record in the advanced economies, the received wisdom in policy circles clings to the notion that high-income countries like America are completely different from the emerging market counterparts. The current phase of official policy approach is predicated on the assumption that debt sustainability can be achieved through a mix of austerity, forbearance, and growth. Now, that's from an IMF paper. From an OECD paper, they state, and I won't go on and quote from that they're expecting to have riots and civil disturbances as the European nations try to apply those very measures of austerity, forbearance, and growth, which is not achievable, and the people suffer. Well, America is being looked at a little bit differently because in these documents, because these are American-led institutions, even though they're an international governing organization, part of the Hydra that I describe in my book. They're an international governing organization, the IMF, the World Bank, NATO. All of these institutions are the new world order you're all waiting to see happen.
That's right. Now, does the IMF and the World Bank, do they dwarf the Federal Reserve?
Financially, they do not dwarf the Federal Reserve, but the idea of transferring that kind of power to the World Bank, the IMF, and the OECD, and the World Trade Organization has always been on the front burner of creating this global corporate empire. It was outlined in a book by a national security advisor called The Strategy of Interdependence. And in it, he suggested you build this empire, this regime, by instituting governing bodies throughout the world dispersed, so no one body can be attacked, eliminated, and would bring down the system. And there's no titular head. It's called an encephalous organization. So you can't remove the head and kill the beast. You can remove a piece of it, but like a spider web, you don't attack the whole thing, so it can continue. The IMF and the World Bank are destined to evolve into a world central bank, replacing the Federal Reserve Central Bank and the Central Bank of Europe, the European Central Bank of the European Union. And then we're expecting the BRICS movement of China, Russia, South Africa, Brazil, and India. They've already created their own central bank, a global one. They've only given it $100 billion, and it's backed by gold. But, it's a growing threat to the Federal Reserve. But the whole point is these things will all be merged into international organizations that have no relationship to nation states. And that's why what you're going to start hearing is language that to me is medieval. This is medieval language, but they're bringing it out because it actually is the correct language. When they refer to this debt structure of America as a nation state and developing and emerging market economies, they're referring to it as sovereign debt.
Is that why, Craig, we see things like this incredible illegal immigration into the United States. And I got to tell you, I feel sorry for these people, for parents to let their children loose in Central America and flood across the border to us. It's absolutely astounding. But we don't seem to be, as a government, doing much yet to stop this.
Well, we have no intention of stopping.
No,
We
it's
have an
part of the
intention.
plan, isn't it?
No, the plan is to absorb them into the economy, because there are going to be very few high-level, high-wage paying jobs for Americans. Like I said, 90 million. That's one-third of the adult population will never work again in America. They're sitting on their butts right now, and in California and Colorado, smoking marijuana, and
Legally.
they're not working, and they don't ever intend to work again. They will be on the dole forever. We also have an entire generation, and actually it's my generation in part to blame, that we feel like we get a job in the Forest Service or the post office. We work for 20 years and we retire. We've got 6 kids. We don't put them through college, but we retire at 40, 43 years old, and then we sit on our butt and draw retirement pay until we're 92. And then we actually have the audacity to tell other members of the community that are out working and paying taxes, I paid into it, I'm just getting what's mine. Well, no, do the math. These people will collect 10, 20 times more than they ever paid into it. And this allows to go on. But there's a reason the government allows these things.
I think an early retirement, Craig, is an early death. I've always believed that.
Well, I don't intend to retire simply because I prefer making war. I don't have any sense that if I were to stop doing what I'm doing and working with my client base and my colleagues throughout the nation about these things, I think I know what would happen. I would just keel over and die.
Do you see some of these major things happening before the 2016 election or after?
Actually, yes. This IMF report is about the sovereign debt crisis. When they use the word sovereign, I mean it's medieval in the sense that they're talking about the sovereign like a monarch.
Yeah.
Or a global leader of a new kingdom. That's the sovereign. That's where that name is supposed to be applied. But they're calling America's debt the sovereign debt, thus making you and I the subjects of that sovereign.